Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Esma. This is Ibtihal Makki.
Hi, Asma.
Hello. On this episode of Zoom In on the Halal Metropolis, we are going to be looking at how university students are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic, and Ibtihal will specifically tell us about an initiative that she took part in. Ibtihal, why don't you introduce yourself a little more and tell everyone the initiative between U of M Pharmacy and Med.
Hi, Asma. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Like Asma said, I'm a student at the U of M College of Pharmacy. I'm in my third year. A couple of weeks ago, when the pandemic really started to pick up in Michigan specifically, we at the hospital saw that there was a shortage of hand sanitizer, which is very much the case across hospitals in the state. And I want to say it was 3 weeks ago that the FDA actually approved hospitals to make their own hand sanitizer. And so U of M started doing that, and they recruited volunteers from the College of Pharmacy to help them compound hand sanitizer. And so most of the students who do it are volunteering, but there's also, because of how disruptive this has been to our curriculum, there's been a cancellation of a lot of, we call them IPs, but they're clinical rotations, and you have to do a certain number of hours to graduate. And so lots of hospitals have canceled their student rotations, and it's made it very difficult for students to finish their hours. And this has been also a way, I think an innovative way that shows adaptability of the college to get their students on track to graduate.
Okay. So you mentioned a little about the clinical hour reductions happening because of the pandemic and students not being able to go to presumably like pharmacies or labs or wherever it is that they do their volunteer hours. But can you maybe go in depth a little more about how this has affected other aspects of your life as a student, personal or academic?
Yeah, so I usually during the school year live in Ann Arbor, and now I'm back in Dearborn. It's not the most, it's not the biggest transition that anyone has ever had to make. Some people have moved out of the state, some people have moved out of the country. Some people don't have another place where they can go. The University of Michigan has allowed students to remain on campus if they need to, but they've really pushed for students to leave if they can. And so I'm very fortunate to be able to just drive 40 minutes and be in my house in East Dearborn and with my parents. And so for me, it's a little bit of a transition because I'm not used to being at home and having to study because the curriculum has been disrupted, but we still have quizzes and exams and we still have to finish the semester. So it's been a little bit of a difficult transition because I'm just not used to it. But I think other people have it a lot worse.
Yeah.
And we're making do. It's okay.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit difficult it feels like I'm not really learning at the capacity that I normally do. But I think that's something that we'll all have to be okay with for now, just given the circumstances.
Okay. I want to sort of jump off of something that you said about how U of M students the university allowed students who couldn't leave to stay on campus. And I've been reading a lot of articles about how schools like Harvard essentially evicted their students off of campus, and how, university is supposed to be an equalizer for many students, but the pandemic has shown how unequal it is because it's sort of created this housing crisis for students who literally don't have anywhere else to go to. So could you talk maybe a little about the university's response, your own feelings towards this? I know you're very active and have been since undergrad in sort of like social causes on campus. So could you just maybe share your thoughts on that, how you feel about it, how you think the pandemic affects bringing these things to light?
Yeah, I think there definitely is differential impact on students depending on their backgrounds and their options, frankly. Especially, it's not just like housing insecurity, but also, do you have a place to get food that's reliable? even if you do have a home, is it a place where you feel safe? I think there's a lot of, like you were saying, this has highlighted a lot of the disparities that students on college campuses experience every day. And I was actually just reading about this. It's, you know, with all these like Zoom conferences and video conferences, you're essentially inviting people into your home in a way. And some people, you know, they don't have, they might be embarrassed by their circumstances, to be quite frank, especially younger kids. I think high schoolers, middle schoolers, when you're at school, like, you might not really know a lot about a person's circumstances at home, but if you are video conferencing with them, that's, I feel, a little bit invasive for some people. And I was reading about this initiative that some high school teachers have been like doing it's like a competition where you have the best Zoom background, and it's meant to like conceal whatever is behind you. And it's like fun, but it's also, I think it's, you know, like
telling of something much bigger that's underlying.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're a U of M pharmacy student, and you know, we've had a lot of conversations with the different individuals about the healthcare field and sort of what it's going through currently in this pandemic. So as someone who is, when they finish school and graduate, going to be a healthcare provider, how has that made you reflect on your chosen profession? What are you currently feeling and thinking about? What does it mean to be a pharmacist when all of this ends?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think just like how we're saying that this pandemic has highlighted inequities within on college campuses and in schools in general, there's a really strong parallel in the healthcare system. We know already that African Americans are the most affected by this pandemic. It's not that they just get the infection more; it's also that they have more underlying conditions that make their prognosis poorer, and you know, that's for a whole host of reasons, ranging from access to healthcare to doctor biases. And so this has also highlighted the issues that we have in the healthcare system when it comes to equality. And so I think, you know, when I read about this stuff and when I think about what's happening in some of these hospitals, it's a lot different than what you're trained to do as a clinician, right? As a clinician, you look at you look at patients' symptoms and the drugs that they're taking, and you think about treatment algorithms and health outcomes, and like that's what you're trained to do. But there's just something so much larger than that I think this pandemic has highlighted. Who can even access you as a clinician? Who can even drive to your hospital? Who's able to afford these medications? And I think just yesterday, one of the major producers of insulin, manufacturers of, I think they're sellers of insulin. It's a technical difference, doesn't matter. But they capped their insulin prices at $35. And there's been like new coupons for patients to use that basically make it more affordable to buy insulin. And I'm sure if it's with insulin, other companies have done the same with their drugs. And I think it just goes to show that they could have done this all along. Even if you sell your insulin for $35, you're still making a lot of money off of it. And I think it just shows that as clinicians, we should be more active in either pushing for policies or talking with companies that sell drugs that our patients need, and being aware that it's actually possible to make things more affordable for people. It's a matter of will.
Yeah. Definitely points that I would hope people who are currently in the healthcare field or are choosing to go down this route in their lives in the future sort of start thinking about these things and be more aware of all the intersections that come along with what does it mean to treat a patient. So thank you for talking on that. And then, you know, do you have any last thoughts about how this pandemic is affecting you personally? Maybe some things that you've been really ruminating on lately since we have all this time on our hands?
I was like just thinking of how disrupted life is, and thinking about how a lot of people have phrased it as like a pause that we're just taking, like the whole world is on pause, the economy is on pause, we're just waiting for it to go back to normal. And I think in the case of a pandemic as disruptive as this one, there will probably have to be a new normal. And I think it's really important to get in the mental and psychological state of accepting that. I think while Zoom conferences are nice, being able to communicate with your friends, this like blessing that technology has given us, is something to be thankful for. It doesn't really do us well to try and replicate what our like normal life used to look like. I think it's better to deal with how you feel about what you're experiencing right now, rather than try to like just manufacture a sense of normalcy, because there is no normalcy. The world really is so disrupted right now. And so I think like getting comfortable with things not going back to normal, because they probably won't.
Yeah. It's a harrowing note to end on, but I think one that is really important. It's an important message for people to hear, because life shouldn't go back to normal. We are in the position we are in because we weren't prepared to deal with this. And so hopefully this will be a teaching lesson. And that's the way that, our governments, every institution, us as individuals should be looking at it. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that. Well, that's all the time we have. So thank you so much, Ibtihal, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts on this pandemic with us. For those of you who are tuning in, if you have a story that you would like to share, if you have a friend or a family member who's going through something and you think that their story is important for people to hear about, please get in contact with us, and we would love to do a story or a segment on them as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you all in the next one.